The fork slipped out of my wife's hand and struck the ceramic plate when she said, "I'm in love with someone else, but I don't want to lose you, so I think we should open our marriage." We were sitting on the patio of a little Italian restaurant in Silver Lake, beneath strings of yellow lights that made everything look warmer than it really was, and for one strange second I focused on the fork instead of her words. It had landed across a smear of tomato sauce beside a piece of untouched ravioli. Around us, people were laughing, glasses were clinking, a server was lighting a candle at the next table, and my wife of 5 years was looking at me as if she had just suggested repainting our kitchen. My name is Ethan Mercer. I was 29 years old, worked as a sound editor for a small post-production studio in Burbank, and until that evening I believed my marriage to Claire was going through a difficult season, not approaching its execution. She was 28, a commercial interior designer with the kind of confidence that made clients trust her within 5 minutes. And for the previous 2 months she had been drifting away from me in ways that seemed insignificant when I examined them separately. She started staying late at project sites, sometimes until 10 or 11. She bought a rust-colored dress she said was for client meetings even though I had never seen her wear anything like it to work. She stopped complaining about driving across Los Angeles, which was odd because Claire used to treat the 405 like a personal enemy. Then there was the name Adrian. Adrian thought the exposed beams in one of her restaurant projects looked cheap. Adrian knew a rooftop bar in West Hollywood that had the right atmosphere for entertaining investors. Adrian had recommended a perfume that smelled like black tea and orange blossoms. His name slipped into our conversations so often that eventually even our golden retriever, Cooper, probably knew who he was. The previous Friday, Claire had come home after midnight carrying a white bakery box from Republic. She told me the design team had celebrated winning a hotel contract, but when I opened the box the next morning, there were 2 carefully wrapped pastries inside, not the leftovers from an office celebration. I asked whether everyone had taken food home. She stared at the coffee machine for half a second too long and said, "Yeah, obviously." That half second stayed with me. Now, sitting across from her in Silver Lake, I understood every late meeting, every new dress, every conversation she had abandoned when I entered the room. "Who is he?" I asked. My voice sounded remarkably calm, almost detached, as though it belonged to the man at the next table. Claire pressed her fingertips together. Her wedding ring caught the light. "You know who. Say his name." She exhaled through her nose. "Adrian." My heart began beating so hard that I felt it behind my eyes. Heat crawled up my neck, while my hands went cold beneath the table. I tasted metal. I remember wondering if I was about to faint, and then feeling embarrassed by that possibility, as if collapsing would be the most humiliating thing happening between us. "How long?" I asked. "Ethan, it isn't as simple as a timeline. That means it's been long enough to have one." She looked toward the street. A motorcycle passed, its engine tearing through the silence she had created. "We kissed about 7 weeks ago. We've been seeing each other for a month." "Seeing each other means sleeping together?" Claire's jaw tightened. Yes, there it was. One syllable, delivered quietly enough that nobody around us turned their head. Yet it split my life into everything before that answer and everything after it. Now, I want you to imagine being in my chair at that moment. The person who knew how you took your coffee, who held your hand while your father was in surgery, who once cried because she thought she had lost the handwritten vows from your wedding, had calmly arranged a second relationship behind your back and was presenting your consent as the final administrative detail. Claire reached across the table, but I moved my hand before she could touch it. "I didn't plan this," she said. "Adrian and I connected. It became real and I tried to stop it, but pretending those feelings don't exist isn't honest." I almost laughed at the word honest. Instead, I asked, "So why are we here?" Her expression softened, and that softness hurt worse than anger would have. "Because I still love you. What we have is stability and history and home. But what I have with Adrian is different. It's intense. I don't think one person should have to be everything for another person. You want me to approve the affair you already started. I want us to create something more honest than the traditional model we inherited." She had rehearsed that sentence. I could hear it immediately because editing dialogue was part of my job. I spent my days listening for unnatural pauses, stitched breaths, and words recorded at different times. Claire's speech had the polished rhythm of a presentation practiced alone in a car. "Does Adrian know about this plan?" I asked. She hesitated. "We've discussed possibilities." That answer gave me the first clear piece of information I could use. Adrian believed she was choosing him, while Claire believed she could keep both of us. She wasn't asking for freedom. She was asking me to remain the foundation beneath a life she wanted to build with another man. Something fierce rose inside me then, but it wasn't the urge to shout. It was colder than that. I pictured myself overturning the table, calling her names, demanding her phone, maybe finding Adrian's address and doing something that would ruin my own future. Then I saw exactly how the story would be told afterward. Claire would say I frightened her. Adrian would become her protector. Their betrayal would transform into a romance born under pressure, and I would be reduced to the unstable husband they had escaped. I refused to play the role they needed me to play. "I need time to think," I said. Claire blinked. Of all the responses she had prepared for, restraint wasn't one of them. "Of course," she said carefully. "I don't expect an answer tonight. Are you seeing him while I think? I don't want to lie to you anymore." That wasn't my question. She looked down at the fork on her plate. "Yes." I nodded once, pulled out my wallet, and placed $80 beside the check even though our dinner cost less than $60. I needed to leave before my body betrayed the calm my mind had chosen. Claire followed me to the parking lot, her heels clicking behind me. When she asked if we should drive home separately, I told her she could do whatever she wanted. I sat inside my Subaru with the doors locked and watched her call someone before she even reached her car. Adrian, I assumed. Maybe she was telling him I had taken it better than expected. Maybe they were celebrating. I drove 3 blocks before nausea forced me to pull into an empty gas station. I opened the door and vomited beside a trash can while an advertisement above the pump promised 2 breakfast sandwiches for $5. That ridiculous sign is the detail I remember most clearly. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with dramatic music. Sometimes it leaves you bent over stained concrete beneath fluorescent lights while a cartoon egg smiles down at you. When I finally reached our townhouse in Los Feliz, I found Cooper waiting beside the front door with his leash in his mouth. I sat on the floor, wrapped both arms around him, and buried my face in his fur. Claire didn't come home that night. At 12:43 a.m., she sent me a message saying, "I'm giving you space. I'm staying with Maya." Maya was her college roommate and closest friend. I knew it was a lie because Maya was currently posting photographs from her honeymoon in Portugal. I typed, "Okay, be safe," and stared at those 3 words until my vision blurred. If you've ever had to act normal while something inside you is screaming, you know how exhausting that performance becomes. Every calm sentence costs you. Every unanswered accusation sits behind your teeth. But that message was the beginning of my plan, even though I didn't fully understand the plan yet. I slept for less than an hour, showered at 5, and reached my studio before anyone else arrived. Inside the soundproof editing suite, I listened to the same 8 seconds of dialogue from a streaming commercial until my supervisor, Jonah, knocked on the glass and asked whether I was all right. Jonah was 42, divorced, and usually allergic to personal conversations. I told him Claire had requested an open marriage after admitting she was sleeping with someone. He removed his glasses, closed the door, and said, "Do not agree to anything, do not leave your house permanently, and do not touch the joint accounts until you speak to an attorney." I haven't decided whether I want a divorce. That isn't what I said. Information isn't a decision. He wrote the name of his former divorce attorney, Lena Ortiz, on the back of a coffee receipt. By noon, I had an appointment scheduled for the following morning. By 3, I had downloaded 12 months of bank statements, mortgage documents, tax returns, insurance policies, and copies of the title to Claire's car. I wasn't stealing or hiding anything. I was creating a map of my own life before Claire had the opportunity to redraw it. She returned home at 7 that evening wearing the rust-colored dress. The scent of black tea and orange blossoms entered the kitchen before she did. I was cooking salmon, and she paused when she saw 2 plates on the counter. "You made dinner?" she asked. "We still have to eat." Her shoulders dropped in visible relief. That told me she had expected rage and prepared herself to survive it. My normal behavior felt like permission. Over dinner, she described the arrangement she wanted with almost clinical confidence. She and Adrian would spend Wednesday evenings together and possibly one weekend each month. She promised not to bring him into our home. She said I would be free to meet other women, although the faint tension in her mouth suggested she considered that possibility theoretical. She wanted us to attend counseling with someone experienced in non-traditional relationships, and she had already found a therapist in Santa Monica. "You researched counselors before talking to me?" I asked. "I wanted to show you I'm taking this seriously." "Did you also decide the rules with Adrian?" "Some of them." "Does he want an open relationship too?" Claire stirred her rice without looking at me. "Adrian isn't married." "That still isn't an answer." She set down her fork. "He wants to be with me. He understands that I'm not ready to destroy my marriage." There it was again, the contradiction at the center of everything. Adrian wanted Claire. Claire wanted Adrian and the life I provided. Neither of them cared what I wanted because both assumed I would remain where they had placed me. I told her I would attend one counseling session before making any decision. She smiled, came around the table, and hugged me from behind. My body stiffened when her cheek touched mine, but she interpreted my silence as progress. That night she slept beside me, facing away, while I stared at the ceiling and counted the cars passing on Franklin Avenue. The next morning, Lena Ortiz listened to the entire story without interrupting. Her office overlooked a parking structure in downtown Los Angeles, and a tiny brass scale sat on her desk beside a framed photograph of two teenage boys. When I finished, she asked whether Claire's affair had affected any shared finances. I told her I didn't know. We went through the statements together. Most charges were ordinary until Lena circled repeated payments at a boutique hotel in West Hollywood, expensive dinners, and a $2,840 transfer from our joint savings account to Claire's personal checking. Claire had told me that money was the deposit for custom lighting on a freelance project. "Do you have proof of what it actually funded?" Lena asked. "Not yet." "Then don't accuse her. Document it." She explained that California's no-fault divorce laws meant the affair itself wouldn't hand me some dramatic courtroom victory, but misuse of community funds could matter. More importantly, clarity would protect me from signing or accepting an arrangement built on lies. I left with a checklist, copies of everything, and a strange steadiness I hadn't felt since the restaurant. My revenge didn't begin with a threat. It began with a spreadsheet. For the next 3 weeks, I wore the mask Claire had made possible. I attended counseling. I listened as she described Adrian as spontaneous, emotionally fearless, and capable of making her feel seen. I nodded when the therapist asked whether I could imagine separating love from exclusivity. I never told Claire that I had already discovered Adrian's full name, Adrian Vale, or that he was a 34-year-old hospitality consultant involved in the very hotel project Claire claimed required the missing $2,840. I didn't have to hack her phone or follow her through the city. She left his business card inside the center console of our car, tucked beneath a valet receipt from the Sunset Tower Hotel. That receipt was dated the same night she claimed to be at Maya's apartment. Adrian's company website showed him leaning against a marble bar with his sleeves rolled up, smiling like a man who had never been told no. His professional biography described him as a relationship-driven strategist, which nearly made me admire the universe's sense of humor. I also learned something Claire apparently had not considered important enough to mention. Adrian was trying to launch his own hospitality consulting firm, and the hotel contract Claire had helped secure would be his first major independent client. Her professional reputation was opening doors for him. Her money was paying for dinners and rooms. Her marriage was providing the stable home she returned to after each thrilling evening. I began to understand that Adrian wasn't merely the man Claire had chosen. He was a project she was financing, defending, and romanticizing. And projects become dangerous when the person funding them starts expecting results. One Thursday night, Claire arrived home at 11 with red eyes and no perfume. She went directly to the kitchen, poured herself half a glass of wine, and asked whether I had ever felt that she was difficult to love. I knew instantly that Adrian had disappointed her. "Why are you asking?" I said. "No reason. Did something happen?" "We had a disagreement." She waited for me to demand details. When I didn't, she volunteered them. Adrian had canceled their weekend in Palm Springs because he needed to meet an investor. Claire believed he was prioritizing work over their relationship. The hypocrisy was so perfect that I had to lower my eyes to hide my expression. "You should tell him what you need," I said. I did. He said I was putting pressure on something that was supposed to feel free. That sentence was the first crack. Small, almost invisible, but real. Adrian loved the secrecy, the hotel rooms, the borrowed weekends, and the access Claire gave him. What he didn't seem to love was responsibility. Claire had mistaken his hunger for intensity and his selfishness for courage. I could have warned her. Instead, I poured the rest of the wine into her glass and said, "Maybe you're asking him to be something he never promised to become." She stared at me, and I saw the idea enter her mind. Perhaps Adrian was using her. I didn't plant a lie. I simply watered the truth. Let me pause here because this was the moment I stopped thinking of revenge as something I would do to Claire. I realized the relationship she had chosen already contained everything necessary to destroy itself. Adrian resented expectations. Claire couldn't tolerate feeling secondary. All I needed to do was remove myself from the triangle slowly enough that they would turn toward each other and discover there was nowhere left to hide. 2 days later, I gave Claire my answer. We were standing beside the kitchen island where we had once selected tiles for the home we planned to raise children in. I told her, "I'll accept a temporary open arrangement, but only if we stop pretending it's equal. You're already in another relationship." "I'm not. I want complete honesty about schedules, spending, and what Adrian believes this is leading toward." Relief spread across her face so quickly that it almost made me pity her. She kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you for trusting me." I hadn't trusted her. I had just removed the obstacle that made Adrian exciting. Within days, secrecy became scheduling. Forbidden dinners became calendar entries. Claire began asking Adrian where their relationship was going because now, according to her, there was no reason for him to be afraid. She mentioned introducing him to friends. She suggested he attend the opening celebration for the hotel project as her date. Every time Adrian resisted, she came home frustrated, and every time she came home frustrated, I listened without defending him or attacking her. Meanwhile, I separated my direct deposit, canceled the joint credit card with Lena's guidance, documented every questionable expense, and quietly prepared a petition for divorce. Then Claire made the mistake that would eventually bring down everything she had built. She asked me to meet Adrian. "He thinks you hate him," she said one Sunday morning while Cooper chased fallen jacaranda blossoms across our small yard. "I don't know him well enough to hate him. If the three of us sat down, he might understand that this doesn't have to be hostile." I watched a purple blossom land in Cooper's water bowl and slowly sink beneath the surface. "All right," I said. "Invite him here." Claire's face brightened. She believed she was finally creating the sophisticated love triangle she had imagined. She had no idea I had already decided that the meeting would be the first time Adrian learned exactly what she had promised each of us. Adrian arrived at our townhouse carrying a $40 bottle of Cabernet and wearing a navy linen shirt with the sleeves folded precisely twice. The same polished casual look he wore in nearly every photograph on his company website. He was taller than I expected, lean, with carefully trimmed stubble and a silver watch that flashed when he extended his hand. "Ethan," he said, holding eye contact a little too deliberately, "I appreciate you being willing to do this." I shook his hand and noticed that his palm was damp. "Claire said honesty is important to both of you." He glanced at her before answering. "Absolutely." Claire had transformed our dining room for the occasion. She lit candles, arranged olives and cheese on a wooden board, and played the jazz playlist we normally used when my parents visited. She was trying to make 3 people sitting inside the wreckage of a marriage look civilized. Cooper sniffed Adrian's shoes, then returned to my side and lay across my feet. "I guess he knows where his loyalty is," Adrian joked. Claire laughed too loudly. I poured the wine and let them talk first. Adrian explained that he never intended to hurt me, that his connection with Claire had developed organically, and that he respected the history she and I shared. He used gentle words to describe brutal choices, sanding every sharp edge until the affair sounded like weather that had simply moved over Los Angeles. Claire watched him with open admiration. "What do you believe happens next?" I asked. Adrian rotated his glass by the stem. "I don't think forcing an outcome helps anyone. We're learning what works. Claire told me you want to be with her." His eyes moved toward her again. "I do. She also told me she isn't prepared to end our marriage." "I know. So if this arrangement continues for a year, you're comfortable remaining her boyfriend while she stays married to me?" Claire's smile weakened. Adrian leaned back. "I'm not putting deadlines on it." "That's strange," Claire said. "You told me you didn't want to keep hiding." "Not hiding doesn't mean we need to map the next 5 years tonight." "Nobody asked for 5 years," she replied. I took a sip of wine and allowed the silence to stretch. In my editing suite, silence was never empty. A pause could expose uncertainty more effectively than a page of dialogue. And right then the room was full of everything Adrian and Claire had avoided saying to each other. I asked him whether he wanted children. He said someday, maybe. Claire had wanted children before 30 since the first year we dated. When I mentioned that, Adrian rubbed his thumb across the face of his watch and said he wasn't prepared to discuss parenting in front of me. "Why not?" I asked. "If we're building this on honesty, shouldn't everyone understand what they're agreeing to?" "Ethan," Claire said, "this isn't an interrogation." "I agree," I said pleasantly. "An interrogation would imply somebody had done something wrong." Adrian's jaw tightened. For the first time, the charm slipped. "Look, I understand you're hurt, but Claire came to me because something was missing between you two. I didn't manufacture that." Claire went still. He had just revealed the version of the story she told him, and it was apparently different from the one she told me. "What did she say was missing?" I asked. "That's between us. You brought it into my house." "Ethan, stop," Claire snapped. Adrian raised a hand as if calming a client. "She said she felt invisible. She said your marriage had become more like a business partnership and that you hadn't been truly intimate in almost a year." I looked directly at Claire. "Almost a year?" Her cheeks colored. The truth was that we had been intimate 6 days before she first kissed him, and although things cooled after that, it had never been anything close to a year. "I was talking about emotional intimacy," she said. "That isn't what you told him. You're deliberately twisting this." "I'm repeating his words." Adrian turned to her. "You said you and Ethan were basically roommates. We were disconnected. You said he had already talked about separation." That was the first genuine surprise of the night. Claire stared at him, then at me. She had apparently expected Adrian to protect her lies, while he expected those lies to remain uncontested. "I never discussed separation with her," I said. Adrian's expression changed from defensiveness to calculation. "Then I was given a different impression." "You knew I was married," Claire said quickly. "Don't act like I deceived you into this. I knew you were married to someone you described as checked out. That doesn't excuse what you did." "What I did?" He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You were there too, Claire. I want you to sit with that scene for a moment, because I had spent weeks imagining these two as a united force standing against me. In reality, their relationship survived by giving each person a different villain. Claire told Adrian I had emotionally abandoned her, so he could think of himself as the man rescuing her. She told me her feelings for Adrian were unavoidable, so she could think of herself as brave instead of dishonest. Once all 3 versions occupied the same room, the romance began suffocating under its own contradictions. I didn't need to raise my voice. I just asked questions. Claire abruptly stood and carried the untouched cheese board into the kitchen. Adrian followed her, and their whispers sharpened until I could distinguish individual words. Embarrassed, promised, and not tonight floated through the doorway. I remained at the table with Cooper's head resting on my shoe. 2 minutes later, Adrian returned for his keys. "This was a mistake," he said. "Probably," I replied. Claire followed him outside without looking at me. Through the front window, I watched them argue beside his black Audi. She reached for his arm, but he stepped away. He drove off, leaving her barefoot on the sidewalk because she had removed her shoes inside. When she came back, her mascara had collected beneath her eyes. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "No. You ambushed him. I asked what he wanted. You knew those questions would make him uncomfortable. The man is comfortable sleeping with my wife but uncomfortable discussing the future he expects her to destroy her marriage for." I thought that was worth clarifying. Claire's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. I slept on the couch, not because she ordered me to, but because I no longer wanted to lie beside her. The following morning, she left before I woke. Over the next week, the love triangle acquired real edges. Adrian stopped responding quickly to her messages. Claire paced through the kitchen with her phone in her hand, checking the screen whenever it vibrated. She accused me of making him believe she had manipulated both of us. I told her I hadn't made him believe anything. She began spending more evenings away, chasing the certainty that had disappeared the moment her two lives touched. Adrian, meanwhile, was preparing the presentation that would determine whether the hotel group hired his new consulting firm for 3 additional properties. Claire had spent months introducing him to decision-makers, correcting his proposals, and quietly using her company's contacts to make him look more established than he was. I knew that because she had bragged about it before confessing the affair, back when Adrian was supposedly just an impressive professional connection. Then, one Tuesday evening, I opened our shared laptop to retrieve an old tax document and found an email notification from the hotel's chief development officer. Claire had forgotten that her personal inbox remained logged in. I didn't search through her messages. I didn't need to. The notification preview was enough. "Claire, I need clarification regarding Adrian's claimed role on the Culver City project before Thursday's meeting." I photographed the screen with my phone and closed the laptop. The next night, Claire told me Adrian was likely about to land the biggest contract of his career. "He's under enormous pressure," she said, explaining why he had canceled another dinner with her. "This could change everything for him." "For him or for both of you?" I asked. Her eyes narrowed. "Why do you always say things like that?" "Because you talk about his success as though you own a share of it." She walked away, but the question followed her. On Thursday, she wore the rust-colored dress again and attended Adrian's presentation. At 6:17 p.m. She texted that they were celebrating and she would not be home. At 8:42, she called me from the restroom of a bar on Sunset Boulevard. Music thudded behind her voice. "Can you pick me up?" she asked. "Where's Adrian?" "He left. You said you were celebrating." "Ethan, please." I found her outside the bar sitting on a concrete planter, hugging her purse against her stomach. The presentation had gone well, but afterward Adrian introduced her to 2 investors as a design collaborator. He didn't mention their relationship. When she confronted him privately, he told her that bringing personal complications into the meeting would make both of them look unprofessional. Then an attractive woman named Simone arrived, kissed Adrian on the cheek, and remained beside him for the rest of the evening. "Who is Simone?" I asked as Claire buckled her seatbelt. "His former girlfriend." "Former according to whom?" "He says they're still friends." "And you believe him?" She turned toward the window. "I don't know what I believe anymore." I could have used that moment to comfort her, but comfort would have allowed her to place me back into the role she had designed for me. Instead, I drove home in silence. Halfway through Hollywood, she began crying. "I thought once you knew, everything would become simpler," she said. "Simpler for whom?" "For all of us. You thought I would absorb the pain, Adrian would receive the freedom, and you would never have to choose. That isn't fair. It's exactly what you proposed." She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. "You agreed. I agreed to see what honesty looked like. So far, it looks like you lied to him about our marriage, lied to me about your expenses, and possibly believed another woman was his ex because he told you what you wanted to hear." Claire stared at me, What expenses? I kept my eyes on the road. The hotel rooms, the dinners, the transfer from our savings. You went through my accounts? Our accounts. The transfer was for work. Then you'll have invoices. She became quiet. At home, I poured water into Cooper's bowl while Claire stood beside the kitchen island, pale and rigid. She finally admitted that the $2,840 had covered Adrian's initial branding package and website. He promised to repay it after securing the hotel contract. You invested our money in your affair partner's business, I said. It was a loan. Did I agree to make it? I knew you'd say no. Then you knew it wasn't yours to give. She began crying again, but this time I felt no impulse to move toward her. The woman in front of me wasn't confused. She had made a series of deliberate decisions and treated my ignorance as authorization. I'll put it back, she said. Tonight. Do that. Claire transferred the entire amount from her personal account while I watched. She thought repayment closed the matter. In reality, her admission completed a section of Lena's financial documentation. The next morning, I authorized Lena to file the divorce petition. I didn't tell Claire yet because the hotel's launch celebration was 10 days away, and Claire had begun treating that event as the final test of Adrian's devotion. He had invited her but refused to clarify whether she would attend as his partner or as part of the design team. She bought a silver dress, scheduled a salon appointment, and spent hours composing messages she deleted before sending. Their supposedly liberating relationship had turned her into someone waiting for scraps of public acknowledgement. Adrian wanted access to her contacts and private affection without the professional damage of being recognized as the man sleeping with a married collaborator. Claire wanted him to prove their love was worth the destruction already underway. Neither could retreat without admitting what the relationship actually was. 3 days before the celebration, Adrian came to our house without warning. Claire wasn't home. He stood on the porch holding his car keys, his polished confidence replaced by a tightness around his eyes. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "Claire. She's spiraling, and I think you know exactly what you're doing." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me so Cooper wouldn't run into the street. "What am I doing?" "You're pretending to cooperate while pushing her to demand things I never agreed to." "I haven't told Claire to demand anything." "You keep asking her where this is going." "That's an ordinary question for two people who claim to have genuine feelings." Adrian looked toward the neighboring balconies before lowering his voice. "She's talking about leaving you now." That surprised me, although I made sure he didn't see it. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "I never asked her to blow up her entire life." "You asked a married woman to fall in love with you. What did you think would happen?" "She told me your marriage was already dead." "You sat at my dining table and learned that wasn't true." He dragged a hand over his mouth. "This arrangement is unhealthy." I almost admired the absurdity of hearing those words from him. "Then end it." "If I end it now, she could retaliate professionally. She knows people involved in my contract." At last, Adrian had stopped pretending his concern was love. He was afraid Claire might damage the business she had helped create for him. "So you want me to keep my wife calm until your contract is signed?" I asked. "I want you to stop manipulating her. You came to the husband whose marriage you entered and asked him to preserve your affair until your paperwork clears. You may want to reconsider which one of us is manipulating her." Adrian's face hardened. "You think you're better than me?" "No. I think I'm finished protecting either of you from the consequences of your choices." I opened the door, but before going inside, I added, "If Claire leaves me tomorrow, she will arrive at your place expecting a future. Decide whether you have one to offer before she gets there." For the next 2 days, Adrian barely contacted her. I knew because Claire stopped hiding her agitation. She called him from the balcony, left messages from her car, and accused him of retreating now that she was finally ready to choose. The night before the hotel celebration, she walked into my editing room at home and stood behind my chair while I removed background noise from a documentary interview. "Can we talk?" she asked. I paused the audio. "Go ahead." "I think we need to separate." The words should have hurt. Instead, I felt the peculiar calm of hearing a train arrive when I had already purchased a ticket. Is that what you want? I asked. I can't keep living between two lives. It's destroying me. And you're choosing Adrian. She folded her arms. I'm choosing honesty. Have you told him? I'm telling him tomorrow after the celebration. That explained the silver dress, the salon appointment, and the restless energy. Claire believed she was about to make a grand romantic gesture. She would free herself publicly, Adrian would finally claim her, and their relationship would be purified by sacrifice. All right, I said. Her expression faltered. That's it? You made your decision. You're not going to fight for us? I looked at her for several seconds, trying to understand how she could ask that after everything she had done. You didn't ask me to fight for our marriage, Claire. You asked me to wait at home while you tested whether another man could replace me. She left the room crying. The next morning, while she was at the salon preparing to offer Adrian the rest of her life, a process server delivered the divorce petition to her office. She called me 11 times. I didn't answer because I was sitting across from Lena, signing the final financial disclosures. At 4:06 p.m. Claire sent one message. You planned this the whole time. I replied, no, you planned this. I finally accepted it. Then another message appeared, this one from a number I didn't recognize. It was Adrian. Whatever you filed has made her irrational. She says she's announcing us tonight. You need to stop her. I read his words twice, then turned the phone face down. The hotel celebration was beginning in 3 hours, and Claire was heading there with nothing left to return to, while Adrian was waiting beneath a ballroom full of investors who still believed his relationship with her was strictly professional. I didn't attend the celebration to expose them. I need to make that clear, because what happened that night sounded so perfectly arranged afterward that even Lena asked whether I had planned it. I hadn't. The invitation bearing both my name and Claire's had arrived 3 weeks earlier, and until that afternoon I intended to stay home. Then my supervisor Jonah called and reminded me that our studio had edited the hotel's promotional film, which meant 2 members of our team were expected to attend in case the playback system malfunctioned. He was sick, our junior editor was visiting family in Sacramento, and I was the only person available who knew the final audio mix. So at 6:30, dressed in the charcoal suit Claire once chose for our anniversary dinner, I entered the renovated hotel in Culver City through a service corridor and took the elevator to the ballroom. The place looked expensive in the particular way Claire was talented at creating. Amber light washed over curved walnut panels, brass fixtures reflected from the polished floor, and hundreds of tiny glass pendants hung above the bar like frozen rain. She had designed the room. Whatever else she had done, she was excellent at her work, and for a brief moment I felt the old pride I used to feel whenever I saw something she had created. Then I spotted her near the stage in the silver dress. Adrian stood beside a group of investors 10 feet away, carefully keeping 2 people between them. Claire kept looking at him. He kept looking everywhere except at her. I went directly to the control booth at the rear of the ballroom, tested the promotional film, and told the event coordinator I would remain until it finished playing. From there, behind smoked glass, I could see almost everything without being noticed. At 7:15, Adrian delivered a presentation about the hotel's launch strategy. He praised the ownership group, the architects, and the design teams, referring to Claire only once as part of a list of contributors. When the audience applauded, she smiled, but her fingers tightened around the stem of her champagne glass. After the film played successfully, I could have left. Instead, I remained long enough to watch Claire intercept Adrian beside a hallway leading to the private conference rooms. She touched his elbow and said something I couldn't hear. His expression became rigid. He guided her away from the guests, and they disappeared around the corner. A few minutes later, the argument began. Their voices traveled through the service passage beside the control booth, distorted but unmistakable. Claire said, "I ended my marriage for you." Adrian answered, "I never asked you to do that." She told him he had promised they would be together once everything was in the open. He said he promised to explore their relationship, not become her replacement husband. Then Claire said the one thing that made the entire ballroom seem to fall silent around me, even though nobody else had heard it yet. You didn't mind taking my money or using my contacts. Adrian lowered his voice, but anger sharpened every word. You offered those things. Don't turn your choices into debts I owe you. I put my career on the line for you. That was your decision. Let me pause here because this was the truth Claire had refused to see. Adrian hadn't stolen her life from her. He had simply accepted everything she volunteered while carefully avoiding any promise that could be enforced. She mistook his willingness to receive for a willingness to commit. And I had spent 5 years protecting her from the full cost of impulsive decisions, so she believed someone would always be there to stabilize the ground after she set fire to it. This time I wasn't. Claire demanded that Adrian introduce her to the investors as his partner. He refused. She told him she would do it herself. That was when Adrian said, "If you create a scene tonight, we're done." Claire laughed once. A cracked sound I had never heard from her before. "We're already done. You're just waiting until the contract is signed to admit it." She stepped back into the ballroom before he could stop her. I moved out of the control booth, intending to leave through the lobby, but Claire saw me. Her entire body froze. For a second, she looked from me to Adrian as though we had arranged to corner her. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Several guests turned toward us. "Our studio produced the film," I said. "I was covering the playback." Adrian approached and spoke through a fixed smile. "Claire, this isn't the place." "No," she said louder now. "This is exactly the place. Everyone here should know how this project actually happened." The chief development officer, a gray-haired woman named Evelyn Shaw, stepped closer. "Is there a problem?" Claire looked at Adrian. He gave the smallest shake of his head, warning her not to speak. That gesture finished what I had started at our dining table. It told Claire that when forced to choose between her and his professional image, he would sacrifice her without hesitation. "Adrian didn't build this opportunity by himself," she said. "I introduced him to the ownership group. I revised his proposals. I gave him internal information about what the hotel wanted, and I paid for his branding because he couldn't afford it." Conversations died across the nearest tables. Evelyn's expression hardened. "What internal information?" Adrian stepped between them. "Claire is going through a personal crisis. Some of what she's saying is being taken out of context." "A personal crisis?" Claire repeated. "You've been sleeping with me for 2 months." Someone near the bar gasped. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted, almost detached, because there was nothing satisfying about watching the person I had once loved dismantle herself in public. Adrian whispered, "You need to leave." Claire pointed at me. "Tell them, Ethan. Tell them why you filed for divorce today." Every face turned toward me. I could have humiliated her further. I could have described the hotel rooms, the missing savings, and the elaborate open marriage proposal. Instead, I said, "Our divorce is private, and I'm not discussing it at a business event." That sentence did more damage to Adrian than any accusation could have. I refused to help him portray Claire as a hysterical woman with an unstable husband. I gave him no enemy to stand against. He was left beside the married colleague who had just admitted providing him with confidential assistance. Evelyn asked both of them to meet her in a conference room immediately. Adrian tried to follow, but Claire remained in front of me. "You knew this would happen," she said. "I knew he didn't want the future you imagined. You made him afraid of me. I asked him what he wanted. His answer frightened you because it wasn't the same as yours." Her anger collapsed, leaving something younger and more frightened beneath it. "Where am I supposed to go tonight? You told me you were choosing him." She looked toward Adrian, but he was already inside the conference room with Evelyn and 2 executives. "Ethan, please." For 5 years, those words would have made me solve the problem. I would have driven her home, made tea, reassured her, and quietly carried the damage she created. That night, I finally understood that rescuing someone from every consequence isn't always love. Sometimes it teaches them that your pain has no limit and your forgiveness has no price. "Call Maya," I said. Then I walked out of the hotel alone. The contract with Adrian's firm was suspended the next morning. Within a week, the hotel group terminated negotiations entirely after reviewing emails showing that Claire had shared internal budget ranges and notes from meetings Adrian wasn't authorized to access. Her employer placed her on administrative leave. Adrian immediately retained an attorney and claimed Claire had provided the information without his knowledge, despite several messages in which he specifically requested details about the competing proposals. Claire's company fired her 11 days later for violating confidentiality rules and failing to disclose a personal relationship that created a conflict of interest. Adrian's investors withdrew. His new firm never officially launched. He blocked Claire's number before the end of the month. For a while, I believed that would be the last chapter between us. It wasn't. 3 weeks after the hotel celebration, Claire appeared outside the townhouse at 6 in the morning. She looked smaller without the polished clothes and careful makeup, wearing gray sweatpants, an old UCLA sweatshirt, and her hair tied into a loose knot. She had been staying with Maya, but Maya and her husband had asked her to find somewhere else because the situation was straining their new marriage. Claire's parents lived in Ohio, and she was too ashamed to tell them the complete story. "Can I come inside?" she asked. "No." The word surprised both of us. She glanced past me and saw Cooper standing in the hallway. He wagged his tail when he recognized her, and tears filled her eyes. "I miss him. I know. I miss you too." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The morning air carried the smell of wet pavement from sprinklers running along the block. Claire wrapped her arms around herself. "I made a terrible mistake," she said. "It was more than one mistake." "I know. I've had time to see that." She told me Adrian had manipulated her, that he made her believe their connection was rare, that he encouraged her to imagine a future and then denied everything when she needed him. Some of that was true. Adrian had used her ambition, her contacts, and her need to feel desired. But Claire was trying to arrange the story so that she became his victim and I became the man who could save her. "Did he force you to lie to him about our marriage?" I asked. "No." "Did he force you to take money from our savings?" "No." "Did he force you to ask me to accept an affair that had already started?" She lowered her head. "No." "Then he may have used you, but you used me too." I was confused. "You were certain enough to risk my health, our finances, my home, and 5 years of trust. I still love you. You loved the safety I gave you. If Adrian had taken your hand at that celebration and introduced you as his partner, you wouldn't be standing here." She started crying openly. "That isn't fair. I realized what I lost." "You realized it when the alternative rejected you. If you've ever wanted an apology from someone who hurt you, you may understand why this moment was harder than I expected." For weeks, I imagined Claire returning and finally admitting I had been right. But when it happened, her regret didn't repair anything. It only confirmed that she valued me most when I was no longer available. She asked if we could postpone the divorce and attend counseling without Adrian involved. She promised complete transparency, individual therapy, and a written repayment agreement for any legal costs her actions caused. She even offered to move into the guest room and let me set every boundary. "I'm not punishing you," I told her. "I'm ending something you already broke. So there's no chance?" "No." Her face folded, and for 1 second I saw the woman I married standing beneath all the choices she had made. I felt grief, but grief wasn't permission to return. I gave her a box containing clothes, documents, and personal items she had requested through Lena. Then I watched her drive away in the car we had once used for weekend trips up the coast. The divorce took 8 months. Because we had no children and Claire returned the money taken from our savings, the financial settlement was relatively straightforward. We sold the townhouse, paid off the remaining mortgage, and divided the equity. Claire fought over Cooper at first, but her temporary apartment prohibited large dogs, and her unpredictable freelance schedule made caring for him difficult. She eventually agreed that he should remain with me. I didn't ask for spousal support, and she didn't receive any from me. Lena made sure the settlement accounted for the remaining affair-related expenses Claire had charged to our joint credit card before I canceled it. There was no dramatic courtroom speech, just signatures, disclosures, and the quiet administrative death of a life we had once expected to keep forever. Claire's professional collapse continued after the divorce. Los Angeles was enormous, but her industry was small. The confidentiality violation followed her into interviews, and the hotel incident had been witnessed by too many influential people. She found freelance residential jobs, but nothing close to the commercial projects she had handled before. Adrian moved to Las Vegas and joined an established consulting company in a junior role. From what I later heard, he told people Claire had become obsessed with him and destroyed his business after he tried to end a casual affair. She sent me screenshots of those claims one night and asked whether I would provide a statement defending her. I replied that I would answer truthfully if contacted through an attorney, but I would not re-enter their conflict. Nobody contacted me. 6 months after the divorce became final, Claire called from an unfamiliar number. She said she had moved back to Ohio to stay with her parents, was working at a furniture showroom, and had begun therapy. Her voice sounded steadier than it had outside my townhouse. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "I wanted you to know I finally understand why you left. I hope you build something better from that," I told her. "Do you ever think about us?" "Sometimes. Do you miss me?" I looked through the open doors of my new editing studio in Pasadena. Cooper was asleep beneath the mixing desk, sunlight stretching across the concrete floor. "I miss who I thought we were," I said. "That isn't the same as wanting it back." She remained silent for several seconds, then wished me well. That was the last time we spoke. My ending wasn't another marriage or a conveniently perfect woman waiting to reward me for surviving. For the first time since college, I lived alone, and I discovered I liked the person I was when I wasn't constantly negotiating for basic respect. Jonah and I left our old post-production company and opened a small sound studio together. We began with 2 editing suites, second-hand acoustic panels, and a coffee machine that leaked whenever someone selected espresso. Within our first year, we secured recurring work from 3 documentary producers and a gaming studio in Santa Monica. I rented a bungalow in Pasadena with a fenced yard for Cooper and converted the detached garage into a recording room. On weekends, I started hiking sections of the Angeles National Forest, something Claire always dismissed because she hated dust and early mornings. The first time Cooper and I reached a ridge above the city at sunrise, Los Angeles looked almost peaceful beneath the haze. I realized I had spent months believing Claire's rejection proved something about my value. Didn't. It proved something about her judgment and her appetite for validation. My worth had never been waiting inside her decision. Before I close this, I want to leave you with the lessons I paid for in sleepless nights, legal bills, and one brutally honest dinner. 1. When Claire asked to open our marriage only after beginning the affair, the request wasn't honesty. It was retroactive permission. A new label cannot make an old betrayal disappear. 2. My restraint at the restaurant protected me more than any explosion could have. By speaking to Lena, documenting the money, and refusing to become Adrian's convenient villain, I kept their choices at the center of the story. 3. The meeting at our dining table taught me that relationships built on separate lies rarely survive shared truth. I didn't need to invent conflict between Claire and Adrian. I only needed to stop shielding them from honest questions. 4. Claire's return taught me that regret and accountability are different. She regretted losing her career, Adrian, our home, and the stability I provided, but none of that obligated me to rebuild what she knowingly destroyed. 5. Walking away wasn't revenge's final step. Building a life in which I no longer needed her remorse was. Now I want your honest judgment. Comment 1 if you think I was right to let Claire and Adrian face each other without warning. Comment 2 if you think I should have confronted them immediately at the restaurant, or comment 3 if you would have handled the open marriage request differently. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, because I'm always amazed by how far these stories travel. If this one stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe for more stories about betrayal, consequences, and rebuilding after everything changes. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional patterns, fully rewritten in Los Angeles to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is entirely coincidental.